Ed Sullivan stood backstage at Studio 50, watching through the monitor as Sammy Davis Jr. rehearsed his opening number. It was November 8th, 1959, and everything should have been perfect. Sammy was at the peak of his career, part of the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, selling out shows in Vegas, making movies. But Ed had just received a phone call that changed everything. The call was from a CBS executive whose voice was ice cold. "Ed, we've got a problem. Sammy Davis Jr. is dating a white woman, a Swedish actress named May Britt. The sponsors are threatening to pull out if he appears on your show. You need to give him an ultimatum: break up with her publicly, or he's off the show forever." Ed looked at Sammy on the monitor, watching him dance with that incredible energy and joy. And Ed knew that in the next 10 minutes he was going to have to destroy either Sammy's career or his own show. There was no third option. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to witness is the moment when America's most beloved entertainer had to choose between love and everything he'd worked his entire life to achieve. To understand why Sammy Davis Jr. dating a white woman was considered a national crisis in 1959, you need to understand what interracial relationships meant in America at that time. In 22 states, marriage between black and white people was literally illegal, punishable by prison. In the remaining states, it was legal but socially unacceptable in ways that could destroy careers, provoke violence, and tear families apart. Sammy Davis Jr. was in an impossible position. He was one of the most famous black entertainers in America, beloved by white audiences who flocked to see him perform. But that acceptance came with conditions. Sammy could sing for white people, dance for white people, make them laugh and entertain them, but he could never ever be equal to them. He had to enter hotels through the back door. He couldn't eat in the restaurants where he performed. He couldn't stay in the casino hotels in Las Vegas where he was the headlining act. And he absolutely could not date white women. But Sammy had fallen in love with May Britt, a beautiful Swedish actress he'd met on a movie set. May was blonde, blue-eyed, everything that 1950s America considered the ideal of white femininity. And she loved Sammy back, genuinely and completely. They tried to keep the relationship secret, but in Hollywood, nothing stays secret for long. The moment the relationship became public, the reaction was explosive. Sammy received death threats. May received hate mail calling her a race traitor. The NAACP was angry because they felt Sammy was setting back the civil rights movement. White supremacist groups put Sammy on their target lists, and the entertainment industry, which had made Sammy rich and famous, turned on him overnight. Frank Sinatra, Sammy's best friend and mentor, had pulled Sammy aside just days earlier. "Sam, you gotta end this thing with May. I love you like a brother, but they're gonna destroy you. You can have any woman you want. Why does it have to be a white woman? Why now when you're finally making it?" But Sammy had looked at Frank with tears in his eyes. "Because I love her, Frank. For the first time in my life, somebody loves me for who I am, not what I can do for them. I can't give that up. I won't." Ed Sullivan had always considered himself Sammy's friend. He'd given Sammy some of his earliest television exposure. He'd fought to pay Sammy the same rates as white performers. But friendship had limits when $50 million in sponsorship revenue was at stake. Ed knocked on Sammy's dressing room door. "Sam, we need to talk." Sammy was in the middle of changing, his shirt half off. He looked at Ed's face and immediately knew something was wrong. "What's going on, Ed?" Ed closed the door behind him. He couldn't look Sammy in the eyes. "Sam, the network called. The sponsors are threatening to pull out if you appear on the show tonight. Because of May Britt. Because you're dating a white woman." Sammy's face went pale. "So what are you saying, Ed? You're canceling me?" "Not exactly," Ed said quietly. "They're giving you a choice. If you go on television tonight and publicly announce that you've broken up with May, that it was just a fling and it's over, then you can perform. The sponsors will back down. Everything goes back to normal." Sammy stared at Ed. "And if I don't, then you're off the show. Tonight and permanently." "And Sam, it won't stop there. The word is already out. Every network is getting the same pressure. Every major venue. If you don't end this relationship, you'll be blacklisted from television, from major clubs, from movies. They'll destroy your career." Sammy sat down heavily in his chair. His hands were shaking. "Ed, do you understand what you're asking me to do? You're asking me to choose between the woman I love and my entire career. You're asking me to stand on national television and lie, to humiliate myself and May, just so white people feel comfortable again." Ed finally looked at Sammy. "I know what I'm asking, and I'm sorry. But Sam, think about this practically. You break up with May, or you say you broke up with her, you do the show tonight, and in 6 months when everything calms down, you can quietly get back together. Nobody has to know. You save your career and you keep the woman." Sammy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ed, you really think it works that way? You think I can lie on national television and then just go back to living my life? The NAACP already thinks I'm an Uncle Tom for entertaining white audiences. If I do this, if I publicly give in to this racist ultimatum, I'll lose every ounce of self-respect I have left. But you'll keep your career." Ed said desperately. "Sam, you've worked your whole life for this. You started performing when you were 3 years old. You survived your father beating you. You survived the racism. You survived losing your eye in that car accident. You fought for everything you have. Don't throw it away for a woman you've known for 6 months." Sammy stood up and walked to the mirror. He looked at his reflection, at the man he'd become. "You know what the worst part is, Ed? I actually considered it, for about 10 seconds when you walked in here. I thought about doing exactly what you're suggesting. And you know what I felt? Shame. Deep, burning shame that I would even consider betraying May like that." There was a knock at the door. Ed opened it and there stood May Britt. She'd come to watch Sammy's performance. She took one look at Sammy's face and Ed's guilty expression and understood immediately. "They're asking you to choose, aren't they?" May said quietly. "Me or your career?" Sammy couldn't speak. May walked over to him and took his hands. "Sammy, I want you to do the show. I want you to tell them we broke up. I want you to save your career." "May, no. Listen to me," May said firmly. "I love you, but I will not be the reason you lose everything you've worked for. Tell them whatever they want to hear. We'll figure out the rest later." Sammy looked at May, at this woman who loved him enough to sacrifice their relationship to save him. And in that moment, he made his decision. He turned to Ed. "Tell the network I'm not doing the show. Tell them I'm not breaking up with May. Tell them they can take their ultimatum, and their sponsorship money, and their threats and go to hell." Ed's face went white. "Sam, think about what you're doing." "I have thought about it," Sammy said, his voice steady now. "My whole life I've made compromises. I've smiled when people called me names. I've performed for audiences who wouldn't let me sit in their restaurants. I've played the grateful Negro who's just happy to be here. And I'm done. I'm done letting white people tell me who I can love, where I can go, how I should live. If loving May costs me my career, then that's the price. But at least I'll still be able to look at myself in the mirror." Ed stood there torn between admiration and terror at what this would mean. "Sam, they're going to destroy you. This isn't just about my show. Every door in the industry will close. You won't work in television, in major clubs, in Hollywood. They'll blacklist you completely. Then I'll perform in small clubs." Sammy said, "I'll go back to doing what I did before I was famous. But I'll do it as a free man, not as someone's puppet." He looked at Ed directly. "And Ed, I want you to know something. I don't blame you for this. You're caught in the same trap I am. But you have a choice too. You can be the man who goes on television tonight and explains to America why I'm not performing. You can tell them the truth about why the sponsors demanded this. Or you can be the man who stays silent and lets them win." Ed felt like the walls were closing in. If he told the truth on air, CBS would fire him. His show would be canceled. Everything he'd built would be destroyed. But if he stayed silent, if he just moved on to the next act and pretended Sammy had canceled for personal reasons, he would be complicit in the racism that was destroying Sammy's career. The show was starting in 30 minutes. Ed left Sammy's dressing room and went to the control booth. His producer looked at him expectantly. Is Davis performing or not? He's not, Ed said quietly. And I need to rewrite my opening. For the next 20 minutes, Ed Sullivan did something he'd never done before. He wrote out exactly what he was going to say to America. No jokes, no variety show. Patter, just the truth. At 8 p.m., the Ed Sullivan Show went live. Ed walked out to his mark, and instead of his usual opening, he spoke directly to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a change in tonight's program. Sammy Davis Jr. was scheduled to perform, but he will not be appearing, and I'm going to tell you why. In the control booth, the director frantically signaled to cut to commercial. Ed ignored him. Mr. Davis was given an ultimatum by this network's sponsors. He was told that if he did not publicly end his relationship with May Britt, a white woman, he would be banned from this show and potentially from television entirely. Mr. Davis refused that ultimatum, and I want to tell you something. In 23 years of doing this show, I have never been more proud to call someone my friend than I am of Sammy Davis Jr. tonight. The studio audience sat in stunned silence. This wasn't entertainment. This was Ed Sullivan committing career suicide on live television. I was asked to keep this quiet, to make up an excuse for why Sammy isn't here, but I won't do that, because what's happening to Sammy Davis Jr. is wrong. It's un-American, and it needs to stop. In the control room, phones were ringing off the hook. CBS executives were screaming. Sponsors were threatening to pull out immediately. But Ed kept talking. If you believe as I do that a man should be able to love who he chooses without losing his livelihood, I encourage you to call this network and tell them. The number is on your screen. Thank you, and let's get on with the show. Ed walked off stage into chaos. His producer grabbed him. Ed, you just ended your career. CBS is going to fire you. The sponsors are pulling out. It's over. Ed nodded slowly. Then at least it's over for the right reason. But something unexpected happened. The phone lines at CBS were flooded, but not with complaints, with support. Thousands of people called to say they agreed with Ed. Young people, liberals, even some moderate conservatives who thought the ultimatum had gone too far. By the next morning, the story was front-page news across the country. Ed Sullivan defends Sammy Davis Jr.'s right to love. The sponsors didn't all pull out. Some did, but others stayed, recognizing that the cultural winds were changing. CBS didn't fire Ed, though they came close. And Sammy Davis Jr., while he did face a backlash and lost some opportunities, found that Ed's public support had shifted the narrative. He wasn't just a black man dating a white woman anymore. He was a symbol of love overcoming hate. Sammy and May got married in November 1960, exactly 1 year after that canceled Sullivan Show appearance. Frank Sinatra was the best man, and among the guests was Ed Sullivan, who told Sammy privately, "You taught me something that night. You taught me that some things are worth losing everything for." Sammy's career did suffer. He lost endorsements, some clubs wouldn't book him, and he faced constant harassment. But he also became a civil rights icon, someone who'd stood up to institutional racism at tremendous personal cost. And when the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964, making discrimination illegal, Sammy was there at the signing, one of the people whose courage had helped make it possible. Ed Sullivan continued his show until 1971. And he never forgot the night he had to choose between his career and his principles. In his final broadcast, Ed said something that many thought was a reference to Sammy. "In this business you meet thousands of performers, but you only meet a handful of heroes. I've been lucky to know a few. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button." The story of Ed Sullivan and Sammy Davis Jr. reminds us that love is always worth fighting for, even when the cost seems unbearable. Have you ever had to choose between what's right and what's easy? Share your story in the comments below.